Well, hello and welcome to this hands-on line learning session. I am Bev Ford with the AIM Center, and I am here with my colleague Scott.
Hey, everybody.
At the AIM Center, we are committed to working towards a more equitable world through math and science education. One of the ways we're doing that is by working to expand making to a broader audience. So you can learn more about our work by visiting our website at theaimcenter.org. Now, along the way today, you can use the chat or the Q&A feature to ask questions and share your progress. We love to have you guys participate. So please ask us questions, ask us to stop and redo things. We want this to be interactive because we know that as we all collaborate, that is what makes it fantastic. So today we are going to be exploring making with clay. The material you're going to want to have is some kind of clay, Play-Doh, modeling clay, air dry clay. There's lots of different options. If you don't have some clay, no worries, because here is a link to a recipe that you can quickly make it up. We also want you to find some different household items that can kind of interact with the clay. So I know when I was a kid, I actually had Play-Doh kinds of toys, but there's lots of different things we can interact with. Maybe a pencil or a toothpick or a knife. Anything that you think could create an impression or leave a mark, or just the sky is the limit. So if you have not grabbed those yet, please go do so now because we want you to play with us. And then we're going to move on to thinking about STEAM. So at the AIM Center, we talk a lot about STEAM and where that is as we're doing these different making activities. So Scott, where's the STEAM?
Yeah, that's kind of the big question, isn't it? We always want to know when we do these activities, we're looking for the science. Is there some science happening? And when we're talking about clay, we might even be thinking, where is clay used in science and technology? And I always fall back on technology that it doesn't mean it has to be plugged in. It doesn't have to have a screen to be technology. There was a point
Right.
in time where a basic number two pencil was the latest, greatest technology. Um, so we'll be thinking about that. I think of technological tools as things that we've invented that our bodies just can't do on their own.
Sure.
So that is a very wide category or a wide definition for technology. For engineering, so engineering involves iteration processes and design and tinkering with things, but with a purpose that we wanted to do something. Of course, it's probably not going to be hard to find an artistic tie-in with clay, but we
Mm-hmm.
still want to keep our eyes out for that. And of course, the mathematics. Where's the mathematics in what we are doing today? So we'll just kind of put those questions on our back burner, and we're going to revisit them later at the end, and we'll ask you for some input. So if you could be thinking about those things as we're going through these activities today. I want
Awesome.
to start, and I will still kind of give people maybe a few minutes if you're whipping up a quick batch of homemade modeling clay. And maybe even right now, I could just show you some of the things that I've gathered. Let me switch my camera here. I've got just a little miniature tub of this name brand modeling clay. And I just have this little packet of air dry clay. And Bev, I think you got these on Amazon really, really cheap.
Yeah, for like 36, you can, I mean, $20 for 36 different colors,
Okay,
tons of
so that's
colors.
like slightly more than a buck a piece. Um, so anyway, that's all I'm using for clay. You can use any kind of clay really. This is air dry, and then this Play-Doh. You could use actual, ceramic clay. For my extra items, I have a spoon and a fork. I've got this egg slicer. I opened the kitchen drawer and I thought, wow, I bet I could do some cool stuff with that.
I'm very
I've got
excited
a,
to see what you do with that, Scott, because when I saw
I'm
that on the table, I thought, I wonder how that's going to work.
I'm excited to see what that does to the clay. I've got a binder clip. I've got a chess piece that I thought the top might be interesting to do something with. and I've got a paper clip. So really just anything around that might leave some impressions in the clay. Want to introduce you to a gentleman who is no longer with us. His name is Friedrich Froble, and in the webinars that I do, I often fall back on Froble because he's just such a huge influence on our education system. He's a huge influence on my thinking and the way I approach education. And he talks about play in this way. Play is the highest expression of human development in childhood, for it alone is the free expression of what is in a child's soul. What a great way to think about children and play. And Froble, if you don't know his name, actually is the inventor of what we call kindergarten. He had what he called his child's garden, and kindergarten is actually a German word, and he was from Germany. And on the screen, you'll see a picture of one of his early kindergartens in the early 1800s. And you'll notice how many desks are in the room. None. Kids are up and they're doing things and they're playing and they're forming shapes with their bodies. And in the next slide, we've got a picture of an actual garden. He actually used to have kids do gardening and experiment that way. And you'll even see the symmetry that's involved in that garden. And if you've been around Ames at all and been in some of our webinars, you know that we use these Froble blocks all the time. And so you might be familiar with the Froble gifts. And it was a series of gifts made out of wood. And they were very specifically made for a really specific purpose. Their sides and angles all correlate with each other. And there was a really intense program, or intentional, that's the word I'm looking for, a very intentional program of moving through these gifts. But he also had some things called occupations. And those were things he would give to kids. And the only difference between a gift and an occupation is a gift doesn't change forms when you're done with it. So these wooden blocks could be put back in the box and they still look exactly like the way they started. An occupation is something like clay, that when you're done with it, it has lost its original form. And what we are going to do today, because of course we've all played with clay, we've probably even led some students through some clay activities, but I want to do it in a very Froblian way, the way he would introduce this to children, and have us think about these things in maybe just a little bit different and unique way. So the first thing to introduce is that Froble, in his kindergarten program, talked about three forms: forms of life, forms of beauty, and forms of knowledge. And let me introduce those to you really quick, and then we'll jump into the first one. So forms of life, he had students build things with his gifts and occupations that were just in their world. It could be a tree, it could be a leaf, it could be something tangible that they could put their hands on. It didn't have to be green and living. It could be an animal, it could be a table, it could be a glass, or just something that a child could physically put their hands on. Forms of beauty were more geometric and design oriented. So they weren't necessarily tied to the real world, but it was like having kids build patterns or radial designs or repeating patterns. And then forms of knowledge were things that represented more internal and abstract ideas. It might be counting, it might be geometry, it might be addition or some kind of math computation. It might be representing something from a literature piece that was read. So we're going to walk through those with clay today. We're going to start with forms of life, then move to forms of beauty, and then forms of knowledge, and just kind of have that framework as we move through today. So let's start with a form of life. And we're going to have some free play time. So just a reminder that forms of life are just things found in nature or in our physical environment. So if you even just look around your space, like I'm seeing a Kleenex box and a clock, and I look outside and I see trees, it also could be something that you remember from an environment. So I'm gonna lead you through making a crab. Um, Now, if you don't want to make a crab, make something else. But instead of just saying, all right, go play, and then not having an idea, if you don't have any other ideas, make a crab with me. But if there's something else you want to make, feel free. And then we'll also ask you if you have your phone out or have the capability, snap a picture of it and upload that image into the chat, and that will be a lot of fun. So I'm going to set a timer to try to keep us on track and on time today. So I'm going to take 9 minutes and try to make a crab in 9 minutes. And again, if you want to crab along with me, that's great. And I'm going to pick a color. I'm going to make just because I'm deciding to, I'm going to make a pink crab. Okay, so I'm going to open up my air dry clay. I didn't open it up ahead of time because it actually does kind of dry out and get a little stiff pretty quickly. The size of our crab is not going to matter, and the size of your form of life, no matter what you want that to be, isn't really terribly important. Of course, we know that the more clay we use, the larger our objects are going to be. That actually might be an opening discussion of science or math, talking about volume and what we can do with those things. All right, so I'm gonna start my timer and we'll see if we can make a crab in 9 minutes.
All right.
All right, so one thing to think about is parts, and Bev is going to talk about composing and decomposing in just a minute, but I want to think about if I'm making a crab, what kind of parts does a crab have? Well, I know it has a body, and in my mind's eye, that crab body is probably almost circular, maybe a little oval. And then coming off of that crab body is going to be some legs. I want there to be some eyes and probably some claws. So I'm going to start with my crab body. So I'm just going to take a chunk of my clay here and I'm going to roll it around in my hands to make a ball. And I guess the real mathematical word, back to the steam, is a sphere. So we could talk about spheres. Now I know that crabs aren't perfectly round, so I'm going to smash that down a little bit. I might even take my spoon, because I think crabs, my crab at least, is going to have a little bit of indentation on the bottom. So it's not just a flat disc. And I'm going to stretch him out just a little bit, so it's a little bit more oval shape. Okay, so there's my crab body. So now I'm going to make some legs. Now I'm going to pinch off a couple small little pieces, make those back into a ball. And then I'm going to roll that out. So now it's a cylinder. Another good math word. All this steam is happening. Okay. So there's a cylinder, and I'm going to make my other, see if I can make my other leg match that. Roll that out. See if
I'm
I
finding
can
it interesting, Scott, to see how everything is kind of starting like with rounded edges, and then we're moving it, kind of morphing it into something else. Like
Yeah,
the body was more like a ball, and then you have these cylinders that you're forming into legs.
right. And that's actually a great observation. One of the things that Froble would always want to have pointed out to kids is how are these shapes related to each other? How is a sphere related to a cube? How is a cylinder related to a cube?
Sure.
So,
Well, and
yeah,
what better way to do that than by experiencing it in its different
yeah,
forms? Like you experience it first as a sphere, and then, how could you take and make that sphere into a cube? Asking that
right.
question to kids might be a really good guided play way to kind of probe them.
Absolutely. Okay, so now my crab has a couple larger legs.
So
And
crabs
he's
have
gonna,
larger legs in the back or the front? I've
I
never thought
don't,
about that before.
I don't know that I'm necessarily making the most scientifically accurate crab.
This is the art,
I'm,
ladies and gentlemen. This is the art.
this is
Scott's having a
this
crab
is
with
my
different sized
abstract
legs.
representation of a crab.
Oh, I
I don't know
love
if you
it.
saw what I did there. I just took these little back legs and gave him a little pinch, and that made him have an elbow.
I
Okay, so
think that's
now
what's
these,
fun with kids too, is, that's where their imaginations can come into play. It doesn't have to be
yeah.
scientifically accurate. It can just be what they think it should look like.
However, if I were a life science teacher, I might have them try to make it as scientifically accurate as possible.
Sure. That kind of goes back to teachers. You get to choose what the goal is. You can choose the
Right.
parameters or make it more open-ended. Because as kids are explaining their crab, that gives opportunities for great communication and building vocabulary.
Yeah. Okay, we've got 4.5 minutes. We're halfway through our time here. Now, I learned the other day from one of our wonderful Ames colleagues that one of the uh, one of the true things about real crabs is they are decapods, meaning they have 10 legs or arms or appendages of some kind. I'm not making all 10. Mine's going to be more like a insect. It's going to have six.
Okay,
So I'm
well,
going to
my
make a
legs are
couple of
improving. I like your elbow idea. I've never thought
yeah.
about making
I
elbows.
like my little elbows. That's the first time my elbows have looked so good.
I never thought about pinching the clay. That's a
Yeah.
great way to do it.
Okay. So there's his front legs. Now he needs some claws. Claws. Crabs certainly have claws. So I'm going to make another ball. All right, 3.5 minutes. This is going to be the world's fastest crab. And
Well, ladies and
I'm going to
gentlemen,
make a
you can keep working
cylinder.
on your crab as you go. We're going to move on because we want to experience all the different forms of Froble.
Absolutely. Okay. For the claw, I made a cylinder, and now I'm just making that into a U shape. I'm going to take my fork, and I'm just going to put some little indentations in there to make that claw look just a little bit more intimidating. Almost like it has a serrated edge. I don't know if anybody's ever been grabbed by a crab claw, uh, but they can be intimidating. All right, so there's one claw,
It makes me
and
think about how cartoons, when they make things from real life, I mean, they're spun on the actual thing. If
yeah,
you don't want them to look so scary, you can kind of make it fluffier or, doesn't
yeah.
look so sharp. And that's kind of the same art as you're building with clay.
I think my claws didn't turn out the same size.
Well, are all
All
claws
right.
really the same? Our feet aren't the same size necessarily.
Yeah, I don't know. I met a professional cello player one time who had been playing cello since he was a child, and his hand that went on the fretboard was like at least a third bigger than his other hand because he had just been stretching it out his entire life. So his claws were different size. So I'm claiming that.
That's awesome.
All right. Oh, we still got a lot of time. We got 1.5 minutes. My crab needs some eyeballs. So I'm going to take just a little bit of black clay here. I think this is black. And I'm going to make two tiny little spheres. And pop one on there.
Oh, wow. My claws did not turn out good. That's
Pop
funny
one on
looking.
there.
Look at them. They're disproportionate.
Oh, those are awesome claws.
Oh, mercy. Start learning so
I'm going to
much.
do, I take my one last minute left here. I'm going to give a little bit of texture on top of my crab shell. All right, if you're done with your your form of life. If you want to take a picture and throw it in the chat in the next few minutes, that would be awesome. I might even give some little foot toes to my legs here.
I think the
Okay.
proportions are really hard for me because like I know that an eyeball is
Was that another
like a
math word, by the way?
yeah, I know. I know. Gotta throw that math word in there. But I know my
Absolutely.
eyeballs need to be spheres, but how big compared to their bodies, like how much clay I
Right.
grabbed at first was different.
Yeah. All right. So here's my crab with 10 seconds left. I think that's the
Nice.
best crab I've made so far.
I think that's a great example of one of the things in making is that you've got the more you make, the more you can tweak and adjust different elements of it. So yes, if you guys have
Absolutely.
not done it, we would love to see whatever form of life you made. Here is my little crab. It is
Yay, Krabby
definitely a little
Crab.
better than some of mine in the past. The little claws are slightly disproportionate. They remind me of like Mickey Mouse gloves or something, but I can live with it. That can still be displayed on my desk.
Good deal. Talk to us a little bit about some big ideas like decomposing and composing.
Yeah. So one of the things that I find really fascinating is even as like Scott was talking to us about making the crab, is he had to start somewhere and he started with the body. So in his mind, he had to kind of take what his mental image of a crab and break it down into smaller parts. The first thing we did was do the body, and that was a sphere that we flattened. And it became the crab's body. And then we started rolling things into cylinders and making them the legs and the arms. We made claws, we made eyes. That's all that kind of, you had to take that mental image, you decomposed it, which means to break it apart. And then you compose your crab with all these little parts. And that's one of the things that happens often in making is you have to be able to decompose and then you're building, which is the composing part of it. We also played around with different textures, right? And that's where we were using these tools and trying to kind of create that more, well, the idea, the artistic expression of that form of life. Um, I know for myself that one of the first things I tried to build was a chair when I was practicing making with clay. And I realized how many parts were on the chair. I just took a chair that was in the room because I kind of lack creativity sometimes. I was like, I'll just make this chair. And I realized there was a wheel on the chair. There were like pipes on this chair that were below it. And so I just looked at that chair so differently as I was trying to then recreate it with clay. And that's one of the things that can happen as we're making with clay. So continue to keep looking for that science, technology, engineering, art, and math as we're making with clay. And I think now Scott's going to take us through the next form with Froble, which is beauty.
Absolutely. Okay, so here we go. Forms of beauty. So just a reminder that forms of beauty are like patterns or designs, something not necessarily or not really related to the physical world around us. A lot of textiles. I mean, I have a form of beauty in my shirt right here. It's a repeating pattern. Um, uh, Radial designs are really neat. A lot of weaving that we've been doing involves forms of beauty. So I'm just going to play, and I'm going to set the timer for 8 minutes this time. And I'll invite you to maybe not necessarily do what I'm doing this time, and just experiment a little bit with. I got to get Krabby Crab out of the way here. He's sticking to the table. He's already starting to dry. Um, Experiment a little bit with design. You might think about symmetry or pattern making. And I really want to get this egg thing going. So While Bev was talking, I actually ran a little bit of this air clay through it, and it didn't do anything. It just turned into a big mushy mess. But I did have this Play-Doh, and it actually worked a little better. Play-Doh's slightly different than that air drying clay. So I think what I'm going to do, I'm going to try, is I'm going to make a cylinder again.
I noticed the feel of the air dry clay versus Play-Doh was different, which makes me kind of think more around the science of, these different forms of modeling clay that can be
Yeah.
used.
Might be a little chemistry going on there. Some of the different chemical reactions. How does air dry clay even air dry? I mean, it's not really wet to begin with. All right, I'm going to stick this cylinder inside this egg cutter and see if I can make. Oh, that didn't work well. What if I just push it through? So that kind of, what I'm hoping is that gave me a whole bunch of little round discs. Oh, I never started the timer. All right, we'll keep an eye on it now. All right, so now I have all these round discs. I'm gonna make some more. I'm pretty sure at the end of this, I owe my wife an egg timer. I mean, an egg cutter.
I had a slight hypothesis that was going to be the case.
Absolutely.
I had tried this air dry clay with like floss because I had thought like dental floss would be really good at cutting with it. And it was
Ah,
ugh, not so
no
good.
bueno, huh?
No
Okay.
bueno at all. It doesn't actually, I mean, it's just the air dry clay doesn't seem to cut very easily. You kind of have to rip it and
Yeah,
reform it.
right. Okay. Let's see, how many do I have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I can do something with 10 of those. Okay, now what do I want to do with those? I think they need some contrasting color. So I'm gonna get, well, I used all my pink on Krabby Krab, so I'm gonna go orange here.
I was taking my peach colored clay and just trying to like see what a design would be with my toothpick. And it's, getting really close to dinner, and I can't help thinking that it's a breadstick instead of a form
Ah,
of
okay.
beauty.
Let's see. What if I, oh, I know what I can do. I'm gonna make this into a ball. It seems like everything I do, I want to start back with a ball. And maybe it's because, you know what, there's something that just feels good about rolling a ball of clay in between your hands. It's very therapeutic. All
Yeah,
right, for the
sometimes
next
I
the
think
next 6 minutes, you're just gonna watch me roll a ball of clay in my hands. All right, let me flatten that out. I'm gonna make a disc. Back to my spoon here. Now, another thing that I think a little bit different than forms of life, but forms of beauty, especially as we're playing with materials of different kinds, there's definitely a tinkering aspect or a kind of listening to the material almost, letting it tell you what it wants to be a little bit. And it's probably kind of an artistic thing to say, but um,
I think you may be more artistic than me, Scott.
all right, well, so be it.
No,
We all,
that's
we
okay.
are all,
We all need to
we,
learn and grow because we may have those students that, you know, might not have a plan. I'm the kind of teacher that would have been like,
yeah,
"What's your plan?" And they've been like, "I don't
absolutely.
know." And they're just doing
Yeah.
exactly what Scott's explaining, like that kind of playing and tinkering around. And not everybody needs a plan.
Uh, for some reason, I thought maybe pulling these off a little bit might kind of be kind of fun. Just kind of pinching and pulling. All right,
One
for
of the
some
things I
reason, when
think
I
to think that looks like a
go ahead.
jellyfish, but there I go
Uh,
making everything a form of life.
I was going to say, when I worked in high school and college, I worked in a pizza place, and this reminds me of spreading the dough out. So
Oh, fair enough.
I think I'm going to, well, this isn't turning out the way I wanted, but it's going to be what it is because now we only have about 3 minutes left. So.
Well, maybe we all have even a greater appreciation for how art must develop and
Yeah.
change, and how an artist has to kind of explore different material and what is happening. I took my little bread and put blue around it, and
Oh, look at that. Yeah.
I know it's kind of interesting, but I
It
mean,
says you're not artistic.
I still don't know what it is, Scott.
Well, it's a form of beauty. It doesn't have to be a thing.
I don't know. We may need to add some more texture or something to.
Oh,
It could be
I'm
my
glad you said that.
brooch.
I forgot about my chess piece here I wanted to try out. What if I did some
This
impressions?
could hold a name tag, I guess. You know, if you put it somewhere, could have a
What if
little brooch of some kind.
yeah. So I'm just making something with some radial symmetry. It's a good little math term for you.
So let's explain what that is. Radial symmetry.
Radial symmetry means that it has some lines of symmetry that go through the middle, and if you rotate it, um, it would look the same.
Okay.
I'm going to experiment a little bit more with this chess piece and see what it can do. I'm going to move my. I ruined that one.
It could be a barrette.
Right. There you go.
If I had a young enough daughter, my daughter's in 5th grade now, I don't think she'd want it as a barrette.
Well, I like what this is doing as it rolls across the clay here. Nah. All right, we'll keep playing a little bit more. I need a spatula to get that up to move without ruining it. I also realize that the things I'm making, even including my crab, I'm tending to make them rather two-dimensional, rather flat. And I know that anybody who's done more working with clay than I have, it's nice to try to do some three-dimensional things. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a circle out of this. There we go. There's a nice circle. I just used my Play-Doh cup to cut a circle. I'm going to experiment a little bit with the bottom of this chess piece. Put a little indentation there. And maybe just go around the outside here. Can be like Bob Ross. These are happy little circles.
There you go. A nice little
There's
pattern.
kind of a nice little pattern on there. Maybe we can go back in and put the crown part in there.
So if you're making a form of beauty, feel free to let us know your favorite tool maybe that you're using. I mean, Scott's being quite creative. I'm still just using my fingers and a toothpick. But I have done a few colors. I added some blue to my we'll call it the barrette.
All right, we're about out of time with forms of beauty. Oh, paper clips, yeah. Yeah, I
Nice.
tried a paper clip the other day. It'd be great to hear, how did you use the paper clip? As a poking tool? Did you unfold it? Did you impress into the clay? Maybe use it for cutting?
Yeah. Toothpick to poke. Nice.
Yeah, poking toothpicks. Oh, that
I
makes me want to
added a
bring
little
that crab back
circle.
and give him some pupils in his eyes.
Oh yeah. I
Yeah.
think having different colors has been an interesting challenge. The one thing, if you use air dry clay, once they touch, they're not
Oh, yeah.
untouching. They're very
Yeah.
hard to separate. You get to form a new color from that.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's move on to now forms of knowledge. And just a reminder that forms of knowledge for Froble were things that were more abstract, maybe representing a math fact or a scientific idea rather than a scientific object. Maybe even something more internal and abstract, like a feeling or an emotion or a concept like freedom or joy. Could you build something that represents those things? Um, and so that's what we're after this time. So we started with forms of life, forms of beauty, and now forms of knowledge. Um, I'm hesitant to throw out any other ideas because I don't want to hamper creativity. I'll maybe, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to steal these back, my little blue discs here. And let's go for maybe 7 minutes this time. See what kind of forms of beauty or forms of knowledge, rather, we can come up with. Here's what
So
Bev was
I have a
talking about.
question,
This,
Scott.
yeah,
Like about, oh, see, look him trying. He's trying to
yeah.
get the air
See,
dry clay off.
that's never coming apart. Those are now living together.
I wonder what happens when you mix it all together. So my question about forms of knowledge
Uh-huh.
was when I think about like freedom, it made me kind of think back. I visited Washington, D.C. and saw like sculptures of different things that kind of represented maybe that idea.
Hmm.
How do you differentiate like a something that is knowledge, but it might also have like forms of life in it? Would that be true?
Sure.
If you're
Yeah.
taking like an emotion, how would you do an emotion? What would be an example of that?
What a great question. How would you do
Well,
an
I can't
emotion?
start on anything if I wanted to choose that. I have no idea.
I might think like if I were feeling joyful, I might I might I might well you don't want to see my head do this. Um, I might take just a lump of clay and like, wow, I just feel great and everything's just expanding and it's coming out and uh, I don't. That doesn't look joyful at all. So let me try again.
And the object represent all three. Well, why can't it? That's a
Why?
great
Wow, what
question,
a
Christy.
great question. Yeah,
And maybe that's all in
absolutely.
the explanation for the person, because maybe to a degree, if it's a form of life or beauty or knowledge, that can be based off of, you know, the perspective of the creator of that thing.
Uh huh.
So
Sure.
I was curious because when I think of like joy, something that always makes me joyful is laughter. And the only way I could think
Wow.
of to like display laughter would be like two people, you know,
Uh huh.
because typically someone will make me laugh.
Sure.
But that becomes a form of life too. So I
Yeah.
think I'm with Christy. I think it can maybe do more than one of those
Yeah.
themes.
So just a moment, we'll talk about the one pager that you can download from our website. And there's questions on there, and maybe or one of the questions that I put on there was have kids tell stories. Like what is that you made, and what is that representing for you? And um, tell me the story about what you made.
Sure.
So I think that's where the freedom and the joy and the more abstract things can come out. I need somebody to tell me if that's a 9 on your screen.
It's a 6 on mine.
Okay, then is that better?
Yep.
Okay, I can never remember the camera orientation and what the settings are. So here's a very abstract form of knowledge that 6 and 3 makes 9. So it just kind of represents a mathematical discovery. Kids could count that. We could even maybe put these on there and make our 9 out of 9 dots. A child could certainly be counting these as they put them on. I could bring my crab back and put 9 legs on him. But I think that storytelling is a big piece. Oftentimes at Ames we talk about helping children make their thinking visible. And this is a great way to just open that door to understanding what does a student understand? What's in their brain that we can't see, but we want them to be able to express that somehow. And this might be a way to help them make their thinking visible.
Multiplication arrays. That's a great
Yeah,
example.
absolutely. Yeah. In fact, I'll switch and make an array out of my.
I think one of the things Scott and I talked about was a lot of times we use whiteboards in classrooms with kids, but could we not maybe even just take clay or Play-Doh and roll it out, and that becomes a new whiteboard of kinds where kids could draw with some kind of pencil or something, or a toothpick, a 9, write an equation.
Yeah.
It's just like a different medium for them to express that knowledge that they have.
I know a lot of kindergarten, TK kindergarten, first grade teachers will have students write in sand. The very textural, very tactile way to do that. But clay is just another medium you might use. But I think what I want to get away from is the idea that clay and these tactile pieces are only for primary grades. That, oh my
Yeah,
gosh, why couldn't we be building molecules in chemistry class? Um, why couldn't we build something that represents an algebraic equation? Um,
sure. It's
um,
very sensory to play with clay. And I know I've
mhm.
got 3 kids at home that love any kind of sensory type of thing. It's even really relaxing for them. So I feel like to a degree, in those other grade levels, using that medium can also even be like a social emotional um,
Yeah,
support for them, because there's just something soothing about just rubbing that clay.
absolutely. All right, well, we're just about out of time. A little bit of time left, and there's some things we want to invite our participants to. Um, so, thank you for playing along with our Froble ideas and our forms of life and forms of beauty and forms of knowledge. Um, so, Bev, let's go back to this question of where is the steam?
Yeah, definitely. So if you can throw in the chat any ideas anytime that you think about as you were interacting with the clay, some steamy moments. One of the things we want to emphasize, especially when it comes to STEAM, is that these things are integrated, and that when you're working with kids and creating activities, you might have certain things that you want to be intentional with, and other times where you can just leave it open-ended and just be purely based off of the students. So like an example is I made my barrette, well, we'll see what it becomes, and I tried to make it 3-dimensional. And one of the things that I noticed was there was some stability happening as I was trying to make sure that the little arches didn't tip over and fall. I mean, that's a science concept. And when you're making, I know that as I've made the crab, I wanted him to stand up. And so I had to actually think about the length of the legs and other things that connected back with the stability of that 3-dimensional object. Another example might be the air dry clay. It changes form. So I have this like peachy colored clay, And then I also have this light blue clay, and the texture of these is very different.
Mm.
And really, it has to do with how much they've been in the air, because they're both air dry clay. So something's happening at a molecular level with this. So material is changing as Scott was interacting with that egg timer. Is that what you called that? An egg timer?
No, it's not egg timer, egg slicer.
Egg slicer, sorry.
Yeah.
I thought that didn't make sense. That also is something where he was trying to change like what that material looked like and use different tools with it. So we have, as you're building your design, when we thought about our crab, like the different ways that we made him, I laughed again because my poor little paw, my claws are disproportionate, but maybe I would have done that on purpose. I didn't. But if I wanted to, I could. That's part of that design. So I know that when Scott was also talking about, he used a lot of math words. So we use things like proportions and ratios and cylinder and spheres. So lots of different science and technology and engineering and art and math happening. And we want you to be able to kind of draw out those things. So we're not saying it has to be one or the other. It kind of just depends on what your goal is, or the child that's playing with it, if it can be open-ended. So another thing to just kind of think about, and Scott, I know we've talked a little bit about, is what are some of those kind of general questions that might prompt a child to try something with clay? So there is a difference between guided play and play. Play just in general would be very open-ended, and guided play is when an adult maybe comes alongside a child and asks them questions, which kind of directs them to a place that they choose, but maybe they didn't think about on their own. You have any favorite questions maybe that you would like asking when working with clay?
Well, my two favorite questions of all time are what do you notice and what do you wonder? Um, but I really like this idea of like just tell me about what you made.
Sure,
You know, oftentimes as a teacher, I fall back on walking up to a student and telling them what I see instead of
sure.
asking a question. Tell them, wow, look at that. Tell me about that.
Sure. And so kind of just keeping that really open-ended and let the kids' vocabulary come out and be drawn out,
Right.
and their imagination express what's there. I know I made the mistake once. A kid kind of gave a leading question and he had done some artwork and he's like, does this look like an airplane? And I thought the answer should be yes, but it was supposed to be a bumblebee. And I was like, well, it has a very long, narrow body like an airplane. Silly
Yeah.
me. I should have been like,
Whoops.
what did you want it to be?
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
But
What
it
does it
is
look
good to
like to
just
you?
have them process around that that experience that they had. That's also giving them the opportunity of recreating that mental material. So when I think about my crab again, right, I could say, well, I made a ball and then I squashed it with my hands. And as I am describing that, my mind is going back into those mental pictures. That's such a key idea when it comes to spatial communication and spatial reasoning. And if you've been around Ames before, you know we love to talk about spatial reasoning, and we often bring it
Big
up
time.
because it's one of those foundations for all of the different topics within STEAM, the science, the math, the technology, the engineering, and so on. But I have to think about that as I'm describing and thinking back about how that happened.
Yeah, absolutely. Well,
Another
it's
idea is
yeah.
as
Oh, go ahead.
drawing, connecting that with clay. So maybe you kind of create an idea or a sketch before you start. Having kids move from that two-dimensional world into the three-dimensional can be really powerful.
Go the other way. What if you
Oh, yeah.
drew what you made? You know, yeah,
Yeah.
you can go both directions.
Yeah, definitely. And that again supports that experience of communication. We can communicate with visuals, we can communicate with words, maybe they're labeling things. Now they've got a reason to learn how to spell claw, or look it up, or something else, use some tool that they have. If you're a science teacher, maybe there is specific vocabulary that you want them to know, and that becomes what guides you in, like, your creation needs to have blank, blank, and blank. It really is such an open-ended tool that can be used in a variety of ways.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so ladies and gentlemen, we do have a one pager just in case this was a bit of a blur for you and you want to just have something to hold on to remind you of our experience today. It will be on our website, aimscenter.org, and we will also have the recording of today's time together, so you can go back in and watch that if you want to recreate a crab or make another one, or tell
Done better
people
than
about
mine.
the different ways we can use clay. And if they want to come watch, they can come watch. And hopefully our goal for today is just to continue to foster creativity and the imagination of the adults that are working with these kiddos, and find new ways to playfully use making and make it something that's joyful for kids and adults. So hopefully that was your experience today. If you guys have any questions, make sure to give us you can email us on our website. And the next time we get together is May 10th, and we are going to spin, soar, and splash and think about seeds as they're traveling. So join us May 10th at 3:30, and we'd love to hang out again and learn by making.
Thank you for joining us, everybody, and hope you have a great afternoon and a good weekend coming up. And hope you're enjoying spring break if you're on spring break.
All right. Bye.
Everybody, bye bye.